Hey guys, welcome back. This is the third and hopefully final day that we spend on section 822. There's just a lot of big concepts going on in this particular lesson. So today what we're going to focus on is how to go backwards through the process. In other words, so we've talked about roots of some of these polynomials. We're going to talk about how to take the roots, like if we know the roots of a polynomial, and plug it back into the equation so that we can see the original equation that the polynomial came from. All right, so I'll show you how to do that with an easy example here first. It says that we have a polynomial that has the following roots: x equals 2 and x equals 6. All right, so we can't see the original equation here, but we can see the two roots or the two x-intercepts that the polynomial has. All right, so we want to write the equation in factored form and in standard form. So they want us to write the actual equation of the polynomial in both forms. All right, so we're going to start with factored form, right? So since we have two roots, right, I'm going to create a polynomial. I'm going to call it f of x, and I'm going to create two factors, right? Because if we have two roots, we need to have two factors. And these factors are always going to be set up in this form: x minus something and x minus something. Always put a minus here, all right? And I know some of them are going to end up being a plus, but I'll show you where that happens later on, all right? So we're going to take our root. Our root is x equals 2, and I can just put that 2 right here. So it'll be x minus 2, right? So remember, going from the roots back to the factors, the sign switches, and that minus will automatically take care of the sign switch, right? So same thing for the 6 here, right? So I'm going to put the 6 in here, so this will be x minus 6. All right, so this is an equation of our polynomial, x minus 2 and x minus 6. And this is the equation in its factored form. But remember, they also wanted the equation to be in standard form, which means I actually need to multiply these factors out. The easiest way to do that is to use a generic rectangle. Just like that. I'm going to put my x minus 2 across the top and my x minus 6 across the side. So I'll multiply those, and I've got x squared. Here I'll get negative 2x. Here I'll get negative 6x, and then negative 6 times negative 2 is a positive 12. And then I'll just add these together, right? So if I'm trying to build my polynomial in standard form, I'll just add these together. So I've got x squared. And then when I add the negative 2x and the negative 6x, I get minus 8x, and then I have a plus 12. So there's my polynomial in factored form. Here's my polynomial in standard form. They both represent the same parabola. They're just written in different forms. All right, so let's do that same process, but this time the polynomial is going to have some complex roots. All right, so we've got a 2i and a negative 2i. All right, so again, we have two roots. So I'm going to say f of x equals, and I'm going to set up two factors for two roots. And I'm always going to do an x minus and an x minus. All right. So I'm going to take that 2i, I'm going to put it over here. So I have x minus 2i. And then I'm going to take this negative 2i and put it right here. So I have x minus negative 2i. And remember how I said the negative would take care of itself, right? Because when you subtract the negative, this will turn into a positive. So really, it looks like this. We have f of x equals x minus 2i and x plus 2i. So this is our polynomial in its factored form. But we also want to make sure that we get our standard form as well. So let's set up a box just like we did in the first problem. And let's multiply this out and see what happens. All right, so I've got x and I've got minus 2i over here. I've got x and positive 2i right here. And then I'm going to multiply, right? So x times x is x squared. I'm going to have negative 2ix, right? Because negative 2i times x just becomes negative 2ix. Don't get confused with because you have an I and an x going on at the same time. It's not a big deal, right? So x times 2i, I'm going to get a positive 2ix here. And then when I multiply 2i times negative 2i, you get negative 4i squared. All right, so I'm going to start writing my polynomial. I'll do it over here. Let's say we've got f of x equals, I'm going to have x squared. Notice that you have a negative 2ix and a positive 2ix, so those are going to cancel each other out. So that just becomes a 0. And then we have minus 4i squared. Okay? There's a little bit more simplifying that we can do, right? Because in the previous lessons, we talked about I squared just being a -1. So this is really I squared minus 4 times -1. Okay, so we've got f of x equals x squared plus 4. Right? So that is the polynomial in its standard form. And it's kind of weird because you look at that polynomial and you would never guess that it has complex roots just by looking at it. Like if we were to start with x squared plus 4, you don't see any i's or anything like that in the original polynomial, but it does have 2 complex roots. Okay, so it's like we're going backwards. Now, before we had started with this and ended up finding the roots here, and this time we're starting with the roots and going back to the polynomial. All right. Let's do one more here. So this one a little bit more complex, right? Because I should use the word complex, but it looks a little bit more difficult because the complex numbers come in 2 parts this time. All right, but it's still 2 roots. This is one of the roots, 1 plus 2i, and 1 minus 2i is the other root. So I've got f of x equals, and I'm going to have x minus, I'm going to leave a little bit of room here, and then I have x minus, and I'm just going to insert my roots, right? So I'm going to do in parentheses, it does get a little hairy here, but 1 plus 2i, and then over here in parentheses, I'll have 1 minus 2i. Okay. So I've set up my factors, and this is actually correct for the factored form. You could leave it like this. We're going to do a little bit of simplifying with it, and I'll show you what I'm going to do here. So in this first one, we're going to have x, and then I'm going to distribute that negative into that parenthesis. So I'll have x minus 1 minus 2i, just like that. And then here we'll have x, and then this will be minus 1 plus 2i. So there it is in factored form. And there's really not much more that we can do to simplify what's inside of those factors any more than what they already are, because the 3 things inside of those factors that we see, the x, the 1, and the 2i, none of them are like terms, so I can't really combine them. But we do need to multiply this out and see what we get in our standard form. All right, so this is going to get a little complicated because our factors, while we have 2 factors, there are 3 things inside of each of the factors. So we're actually going to need a 2x3 box to help us out with this. Okay, so I'm going to take my box. I'm going to split this in half, and then I'm going to split this 3 ways, just like that. So a 2x3 box here. Okay, and then all right, so then we're going to take x minus 1 minus 2i, and I'm actually going to have to add a 3rd row here, just like this. 3x3 box. All right, so we've got x minus 1 plus 2i. And I'm going to go through and multiply this thing out. So x times x is x squared. We have negative x. We have negative 2ix. We have another negative x. This will be a positive 1. This will be positive 2i, because that's 1 times negative 2i. Then we'll have 2ix. And then we'll have negative 2i. And then 2i times negative 2i is negative 4i squared. Okay. So I know I had said originally you wanted a 2x3 box. I made a mistake. This should be a 3x3 box, right? Because each of the things we're multiplying, we need 2 sides to our generic rectangle with 3 slots for 3 things. All right, so let's go through and add this together. Let's see what we end up with. So I've got x squared, and I got to check the rest of these and see if there's anything that it'll combine with, and there is nothing there. So we've got x squared. And then I go through and I've got a negative x here. I've got another negative x here. So I can combine those and get a negative 2x. And I don't see anything else that's a like term to combine with. So I've got x squared minus 2x. And I'll keep track of the boxes that I've taken care of so far. So we've got that one, and that one. Okay. I'm going to go back here. So then I've got a negative 2ix, and then I have a positive 2ix. All right, so those are going to cancel each other out. All right, so those are taken into account. So gone, gone. Those canceled out and became 0. All right, notice here the 2i and the negative 2i, those cancel out. Those are gone. Okay? And then I have a 1, so I'll go ahead and put that in my polynomial. That doesn't combine with anything, so it's just a plus 1. And then we have minus 4i squared. Okay, so these two are they were the last two, and they didn't combine with anything else. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to start trying to simplify a little bit more over here. So remember, I squared is just a negative 1, so this is really just minus 4 times negative 1. And I'll just keep on going here. So x squared minus 2x plus 1. This will turn into a plus 4. Right? And then 1 plus 4 turns into a 5. So this is really just x squared minus 2x plus 5. And there's my polynomial. So my polynomial in its standard form is x squared minus 2x plus 5. That was a tricky one. That one, like if we see roots like that, you're gonna have a little bit of some complications going on here. So it does get a little bit more difficult. All right. So if you look at the rest of the notes, it's really just more practice with that. I might do. You guys have seen examples of those. Let's do B together because this one has some square roots in it. So just in case you're intimidated by the square roots, we can handle those. Okay. So they want the polynomial in factored and standard form. And truth is, you're going to want to start in factored form for all of these anyways. So the factored form is actually helpful. So we're going to have x minus root 2, and then we'll have x minus negative root 2, right? Because there's our root 2, there's our negative root 2. And then I'm going to simplify that a little bit, let those negatives take care of themselves. So we've got x minus root 2 and x plus root 2. And then I set up a box. Okay, just like that. And I'll put x minus root 2 here, x plus root 2 here. This becomes x squared, negative root 2 times x. This will be positive root 2 times x. And then this will be root 2 times negative root 2. So it's going to be negative. And then root 2 times root 2 is just 2. Okay. And if you don't believe me, you can put that in your calculator and do root 2 times root 2. You'll get a 2. Because root 2 times root 2 is the same thing as root 4, and the square root of 4 is just 2. So, all right. So then I go to add these together, right? So I'm going to start writing my standard form by adding those 4 boxes together. And you'll notice that the negative root 2x and the positive root 2x, they cancel each other out. So all you have left is x squared minus 2. There's your polynomial. All right, so don't get thrown off by square roots. I know you guys see this one down here with f as well. Same thing, right? Set up your 2 factors. You got 2 roots, so we're going to have x minus I root 3 and x plus I root 3. And I kind of skipped over that simplification step because this would be minus a negative I root 3, right? Which is going to turn into a plus. And then I can set up my box right from there. Again, we'll need a 2 by 2 box for this one. So we'll have x minus I root 3, x plus I root 3. So this will be x squared. This will be xi root 3, okay? There's not really a whole lot you can do with that multiplication, so it just turns out to be this messy number. But as we've seen in the previous example, usually that messiness ends up canceling out, which is what we're going to see here, right? So when I do x times negative I root 3, we just get negative xi root 3 there. And then this one is the one that you need to be careful with, all right? So if I do negative I times I, you get negative I squared, and then root 3 times root 3 is just 3, okay? So just leave it just like that, and then start writing your standard form. So we're going to have x squared. These guys cancel because they add up to 0, and then you're going to have minus I squared times 3. And just remember, I squared is a negative 1. So x squared minus negative 1 times 3. Make sure you get your multiplication first. We've got x squared minus negative 3. Okay. Then take care of this minus a negative here, which is going to turn into a plus. So really, this is just x squared plus 3. And that is our polynomial in standard form. All right, guys, that was fun. Check back in for another lesson on Thursday. Have a good day, guys.